actually, I would say like 99% of the time, there's a disconnect. What they want is not solidified by them. Even if they think they know what they want, that's where the experience of a designer comes in, because we bring a lot of experience to the table and we know more about the end result outcome than they know. Most people are looking at like an inspiration picture, or, oh, I went to my friend's house and her kitchen is like this and I really loved it. And design is really not about copy and pasting. It's successful design is very unique to the person experiencing that space. I solve problems through the application of interior design. If I don't understand what your problem is, I can't fully serve you and walk away knowing that when I leave, you're going to be happy here. You're going to get that return that a designer is going to bring to the table. Welcome back to Return on Design. I am your host, Rachel, and I am joined with my co-host and fantastic husband,
Justin.
And today we want to talk about something that many people want to know. Like, what is it that interior designers really do? And why does it matter? Like, why do you actually need an interior designer? What kind of value are they adding to your life?
Yeah, there's a whole lot more to this process of being an interior designer, and I know that just from working with you, watching you, but I think most people think that an interior designer is there to pick out the pretty things and the finishing touches, and that's really it. But there's so much more.
Yeah. The reality is an interior designer's work begins far before you ever see anything pretty come into a space. And I just want to go through that and kind of break that down for our listeners. Let's give them a glimpse of the process, the real process that we go through in our design build firm, and what they could expect or what they should be looking for if they are looking to bring a designer on their team.
Okay. So what is the first thing that an interior designer actually does? So like if a client comes to you and says, I want you to redesign my space, what is the first step of your process? Because it's, again, I think most people think it's picking the finishes. That's where you immediately go.
Yeah. So I really start with what I refer to as like a design audit. So there's two facets to that. I am evaluating what is seemingly obvious to me as a designer, which includes the actual space, the architecture, the lighting, the color, the material, the current finish selections, all the things that I can actually see with my eyes. But then the second phase of that, which is really probably more important, is I need to understand the client. So I want to know what their pain points are, why they want to redesign their space, who lives in the space, their lifestyle, their ambition. All these things help me dial in to actually develop a space that's going to serve them and add value and really be fruitful at the end, versus just focusing on those aesthetic aspects that I can already visually see with my eyes.
So it's not just, oh, we need new furniture or we need new finishes. It's a whole lot deeper than that.
Yes. But oftentimes the client doesn't realize that. So a huge part of the audit, if you will, is diagnosing root problems. So a client might come to me and say, I just don't like my living room, or my kitchen just feels off. I want to redo the space. It feels dated. So they're telling me sort of these like symptoms of how they feel. And it's rooted in an emotion or an experience, but it's not really telling me anything about the space. Like, people don't typically say, my kitchen, it feels too small and I have 6 people in my family, and when I'm cooking, I feel cramped. Like, that's not normal language when someone's describing a pain point. So during this diagnosing process, I'm very keen on listening to what they're describing to me and then probing them deeper. So example, if they said, my living room feels dark, well, I could see that with my eyes visually. And I'd say, okay, well, tell me what you do in the living room. Do you watch TV? Is there a fireplace? Like, are you hanging out, watching a football game? I need to understand how you're actually living in this space. And that leads me to another question, because I'm really trying to solve a problem. But if I can't identify really what the problem is, then, I'm not really resolving anything for them on a deep level.
That's interesting. That's really good because everybody has that. So many people have that. Oh, I want to change this, but I don't know why. And it's you're finding their why so that you can adequately design to fit the space and make their needs and make it what they want.
I'll give you another example. I have a girl that I'm coaching through, and she's a new designer, and she's doing a bathroom redesign. And she asked me, can I send you my specs, my design specs, the floor plan, everything I want to do? And I said, yes, absolutely. I'd love to kind of give you feedback, but I need to know more about who's going to be living in the space because that matters. So if I'm only looking at the design in terms of, where's the location of the shower and the shower head and the sink and all of these technical things, I'm only giving her so much advice versus if I know, okay, there's a family of 4 that are going to be utilizing this. And these are the age ranges of these people. And that helps me identify needs that might be overlooked. Like, do we have adequate storage? Is there a bathtub for the children, or are we only dealing with the walk-in shower? And so all of these details around livability help me cultivate and craft the right design. And same in that scenario. So I'll be able to advise her in a greater depth.
That's a good way to think about it. I didn't realize you did all that sometimes.
Back to this diagnosis. So I am evaluating, again, obvious things I see, but I need to know traffic flow. If I'm only focused on traffic flow apart from livability, then that's limiting, how I can actually design the space. Like if it's 2 people living in a space and they're a married couple with no children, the traffic flow and the function of that room is going to be different than if it's a family of 4 and 2 of those are young children. All of that matters in.
But also think in that too, like also forward thinking of, and I've seen you do this with clients of like, well, how do you want to use the space? What are you looking to be able to do? And so that a young married couple that maybe doesn't have kids, but maybe they're planning to. So we need to factor that in too, correct?
Yeah. I say a lot, aesthetics is the easy part. And it's subjective in the sense that like one person might like gray color tones and one person might like, green color tones or whatever. So it's subjective on what the final aesthetic is going to be. It has more to do with how you're actually experiencing the space that's going to make you happy, get you that return on design of ensuring that we're actually redesigning the space to improve your life, improve how you experience the space. And to your point, it's typically around how are you currently living, where you're feeling dissatisfied, and where's that gap? Once I can identify that gap, then the aesthetic part comes easy.
Okay, so what you're saying is you translate, or you're taking and translating what they feel into what they actually need and want.
Because oftentimes there's a disconnect. Actually, I would say like 99% of the time, there's a disconnect. What they want is not solidified by them. Even if they think they know what they want, that's where the experience of a designer comes in. Because we bring a lot of experience to the table, and we know more about the end result outcome than they know. Most people are looking at like an inspiration picture, or, oh, I went to my friend's house and her kitchen is like this and I really loved it. And, design is really not about copy and pasting. It's successful design is very unique to the person experiencing that space. And so, I solve problems through the application of interior design. If I don't understand what your problem is, I can't fully serve you and walk away knowing that when I leave, you're going to be happy here. You're going to get that return that a designer is going to bring to the table.
After you've done your diagnosis, after you understand what the problem is and what the client's wanting, what's your next step? I mean, is it picking out finishes, or is it new layouts? What?
Yeah, it starts with layout. So form and function are like the baseline. That's where we're starting. But everything I'm designing, once I've established the goal and helped the client understand, like, you have all these symptoms, but here's what we actually want to accomplish. So now we have a goal that becomes the foundation, if you will, of every decision is now going to support that goal. And I'm going to start with form and function. So that can be, addressing really form and function. We're going to address the lighting of the room. I'm going to look at the material of the room. We're going to then move into, furniture positioning. And even if I'm not going to be supplying furniture for that project, I'm going to be designing with the intent that the client understands how to achieve the flow and function based off of furniture placement for that space. And I typically do presentations for clients in sections because it's easier to digest and it helps them not become overwhelmed with like decision fatigue, but so that we can isolate and concentrate their focus one space at a time. So, as an example, I might start with a client and say, okay, well, we're going to do your whole house, let's say, or your primary living areas. What's the most important thing? Like, what do you want to see done first? And so in part of that goal setting, it's helping me outline a priority of focus that I can show them. And that helps me in my presentation effort. So, because there's a lot of decisions when it comes to interior design.
Yeah.
That's one of the values of having a designer. So let's say we're going to start in the master bedroom, and behind the scenes, I'm still cohesively designing the whole space collectively, but I'm only going to show them one bite-sized piece at a time. And I'm going to give them 2, possibly 3 options to choose from. Because the whole point is that I am presenting a design that's reaching, it will reach the goal that we've established. And I'm, looking at form and function and color and, material selections, everything that's going to support that goal. But I don't want them to have to make too many decisions. It's usually an A and a B. And that's usually rooted in color and aesthetic. And that helps me also determine like where they're leaning, if they're drawn to like a lighter hue or a darker hue. And then once we solidify that in the first section, everything kind of stems from there.
Yeah, I think part of why you do some of that is because there are so many options out there, and trying to navigate all of the different options is frankly overwhelming. And so that's one of the things with being an interior designer. You're always trying to minimize that, as you call it, decision fatigue and that overwhelm. Because we've seen that with clients, and I know early on, when we first started building some of our own homes, we faced some of that ourselves.
Yeah. And the other thing, I'm also refining the selections based off of other aspects. So it could be scale, it could be pricing and color. All of those things matter. During that initial design phase, I am refining selections to control decision fatigue, yes, but also to narrow down certain design aspects. So if I need a couch that's 100 inches to scale the room correctly, 100 inches long, let's say, I'm able to refine that down, and they're not having to try to decipher like, oh, do you want an 80-inch sofa or do you want a 100-inch sofa? Like, I'm already making that decision based off form, function, flow, and how the initial or how the final, design plan for the room will be. I'm considering the budget that we've set aside. I'm considering material selections and applications. All of these details that matter and that you have to make these decisions, I'm making it for them. So if I am doing a floor as an example in a room, and we have 2 price points, or we have 2 options that fit within that price point. Let's say we have a wood floor, or we can do a ceramic or porcelain wood look floor. So I'm going to show them just 2 options, similar color. The aesthetic's going to be the same. The application's a little different, and the outcome's going to be different. So now all they have to decide is, what type of result do I want? This is this price point, and it's going to feel like this under my feet, and I'm going to have to care for it this way. Or option B, it's going to be this price point, and so it's like it's not, do you want light or dark necessarily all the time? It's A or B.
Yeah.
Did I go too far down the rabbit hole?
I don't think you went too far down it. It's helping to guide where they're going, how they're going, and minimizing how many stressful decisions there are that can be made in this. And
we're not doing too many revisions.
Mhm.
You know, when you hire a designer, you have to trust the process of the initial presentation. It's not like a guess. Like we're laying something out to maximize the space. Of course, make it beautiful, but we're looking at livability, the function, everything around scale, form, all of it. And then the presentation is made to you. So it's not like, oh, I want to see the bed on that side of the wall. Redo the whole thing. And you're like, you have to trust the fact that we put the bed over there for a purpose, and this is the purpose, and we don't recommend it go on this other wall for this reason, that type of thing. So you have to minimize the amount of revisions allowed as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Leading into some of that, you've talked about materials and furniture and things like that. And I think so many people think that a designer is shopping at the same places that everybody else is. You go down to the local furniture store or Home Depot and you're finding tile, or, sometimes just maybe a tile store, but there's so much more. Designers have access to thousands of different things, different materials and manufacturing. And, what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, designers have trade access. So we don't buy typically retail. We're buying wholesale direct from manufacturers, and we're getting access to product that people are not. I mean, it's an industry profession. And so that's part of what you're buying into when you get a designer. We can get very customized stuff from furniture to wallpaper to, textile, curtains, all sorts of things. And you're not going to be able to find that on your own. That's one of the major advantages of having a designer. And it's also something, that designers do, that we bring to the table. Of course, that varies depending on project and budget and all of those things. But yeah, it matters.
I mean, you have access to specialty lighting that, you're not going to go down and just find anywhere.
Right.
Or, special fabric for, I want this couch in a certain shade and a certain type of material because it's going to fit the design for this client perfectly. You actually have access to finding that I'm going to say 99% of the time they would never find.
Right. That's definitely an advantage. People should understand that because designers are not typically just going down to Home Goods and shopping for people. There's a whole lot more depth to that. And, there's countless hours that go into not only designing, but then sourcing to fulfill that design. And it takes a tremendous amount of time. And you're going to get the quality on the other side if you allow your designer to fully.
So, and in that, it gives you spaces that feel more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It feel more custom.
Yeah.
And in some cases it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the customization that, we're bringing. I mean, because even if we're we just have a different access point.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to go down to even a local art gallery,
mm-hmm.
as an ordinary person, they might get very customized with me. But if I went down as a trade partner that already had an established relationship, I've been doing business with these people for a while. I mean, they're going to work with me at a different level than they would somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, also that access allows you to better construction, goods, higher quality materials, things of that nature that you don't see in some applications.
Yeah, and better pricing.
Better pricing, which, again, to work within the budget.
Yeah, part of that trade relationship is pricing, volume pricing, and different benefits that you can extend to your client. And they can get, higher end material without paying that full retail price.
So I guess moving on to the next thing, okay, we've got a lot of materials that we've selected and, the next thing, though, is the logistics of it all.
Yes.
And that's a key to making any of these projects come together completely. And that's something that I think most people actually never see and understand is the logistics behind it. So why don't we talk about some of that?
And when you have a good design team, you will show up and things will be done and you don't even have to do anything. I mean, they completely install and they clean up their mess. You show up and everything's ready and beautiful, just the way you anticipated. And logistics is yes. I would say a good 25% of a full design project is logistics. Well, probably even more, really, because as soon as you start refining design, you've made selections. Well, now we move into procurement where we are ordering to fulfill. And then once we receive, we have a team that comes in and logistically not only gets the product once it's been received to our final location, but now we're doing all custom install as well. And if we have an issue, like let's say something shows up damaged or, I don't know, it didn't show up at all or went to the wrong address, whatever, that's something that designers are always working on the back end with all of our suppliers and our whole logistic team to make sure that things are corrected. And the client never even knows about that.
I mean, I think, well, so to put some of that in perspective, I think, most people don't realize that just a single room in the design could involve how many different vendors, I mean,
you could depends on the scope.
Depending on the scope, but I mean, you could easily say probably anywhere from, 5, 10. If it's a larger scale, it could be more than that. And then, each vendor, depending on what it is that they're providing, the different lead times, where, different sources of their material that they've got to have. And, then shipping timelines. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times have we seen it's like, oh, I can have that ready to ship in 3 weeks, but the shipping,
6 weeks.
The shipping is going to be 6 weeks,
Right. Yeah. And then all of the, procurement and logistic coordination, but now you're talking about the implementation. So my rug might arrive, 2 weeks before the sofa and the lamp, and all of these things have to come together for install at the perfect time, and things have to be put down. I mean, there's always sometimes when you have to make exceptions, but ideally, right, you're going to start at the bottom and build your way up from your rug to your bed, to your nightstands, to your lamp.
And you're coordinating all that of like when material's here, if it's not ready to be installed, it's got to be stored somewhere, and making sure we have the correct storage facility with the correct installers ready when everything is in place, and making sure that, because it showed up damaged, we've got to get it corrected, because I'm not going to put damaged product in your house.
Waste disposal is a big deal too. Even if you go online yourself and you buy new counter stools or bar stools, it's going to come in some type of a box.
The box, the styrofoam, the plastic. Oh my gosh, there's a whole lot of material right there in packing.
A design install is going to take care of all of that. You're not going to see any of that. You're not going to have to deal with it. So it's a major advantage to having a team, but it's also a very real aspect to a huge part of our time on a design job.
Okay. And then lastly, so, we've assessed the space, we've made new plans, we've, decided on different furnitures or fixtures or, even colors and applications, and we've procured the last thing you got to do though is you got to execute it.
Yeah.
Get it in. I know you've talked a little bit on, you manage the install crew, and, we have to coordinate those logistics and things like that. But there's still a level of, even on a bigger job, where there's new flooring, new cabinetry, new paint, new, or if it is the furniture and things like that, coordinating and then overseeing not only the logistics, but the application and making sure it's done correctly.
Yeah. And to the design spec.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to also accommodate the homeowner. I mean, most of the time people say, especially when they're living in the house, right? They're like, oh, it's fine. Yeah. I'm like,
we'll just move out of the way.
Where are you going to live when we do all this work you want to do? And they're like, well, we'll just live on this side. And it's fine. People can do that. But it adds a whole nother layer of complexity to execution and the coordination required.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, like, all the material, where are we going to store it? Who's going to receive it? Who's going to deliver it? what trade goes first. And there's a lot that goes into that. And that's what your design team and really your whole team led by your designer is doing. And that's why it takes so much time. And that's why designers, charge the way they charge, because it's a tremendous amount of time.
And work the way that we work. Because, yes, we've worked with clients where, we are doing a whole lot more, and we have to implement in phases. Now the process that we're talking about here is still the same process, but now we're having to break it into more steps of the process by, I'm going to do it over here, and then we're going to move over here, and then we're going to move over here.
And
still going through the same and try and make it as seamless and as,
trying not to affect them or disturb them. We always joke, but there's a reason why when you watch HGTV and they do major renovations, they make people leave. It's not just for the drama of before and after. It's for logistics, execution, and everything that happens to actually make those things come to fruition. So,
and sometimes it minimizes some stress for people. Because it's stressful for the homeowner trying to live in that situation. You've got people coming in and out and doing the work that they need to do, but you're also trying to live.
Right. So I guess takeaway there is, if you can avoid living in a construction zone, you should. Because so many people get a little over ambitious and think like, oh, it's fine. We'll just cook on the back patio for 2 months. And that feels like 6 months.
Yeah.
But, I want to circle back. I don't feel like I shared enough about that initial design and how an interior designer goes through that initial design phase and presentation. Some do it differently. They might present the entire house all at once. And, like I said, I tend to try to break it down into bite-sized, digestible pieces so that we can keep momentum going and we're making decisions. But back to that narrative. So if I'm starting on, let's say I'm doing like an open floor plan, and I might be doing the kitchen, the living, and like the den or something. I might focus first with the client focused on just the living room. So I'm behind the scenes designing the whole space because everything is cohesive and the design in one room is affecting the design in the other room. But then when I go to actually show them for decision-making purposes, I want them to just be focused on one room at a time, because it can get, like we said, very overwhelming and, almost distracting, like, shiny object syndrome. So once
squirrel.
Once we've solidified and I have buy-in or approval, if you will, for this portion of the design, then I will, make any adjustments I might need to make on the other aspect. And then the next bite size comes into play. So it's still very much a cohesive process. And the design aesthetic is all going to come together, seamlessly in the end. But I have found that it helps people make decisions and keeps the project moving nicely together.
Yeah, I have to make 2 to 3 decisions right here instead of 10 all at once.
Yeah. And I think that's a preference that the designer can establish, and also that you can kind of gauge that with the client. It doesn't have, it's a relational business, but there have been times where clients want to see more, and, making sure you understand, like the listener understands that whether you're a client or a designer, it doesn't really matter, but you have to trust the process, and you have to be able to allow the space for the professional to like execute in a way where they're taking you on a journey. Like designers, we have the ability to see things in our head, and we're it's that creative aspect of like, we're designing this space and I see it in my mind and I know what I want to do to achieve this goal. And then I have to articulate it to somebody else so that they can see what's in my head. And sometimes I have to deliver that in a way that, I don't know, makes more sense for them. Because if I showed you everything in my head at one time,
yikes,
you might run from me. One last thing on that is, for people going through a process, whether it's, it doesn't really matter, new build, renovation, whatever. It's a word of advice. Like, you don't have to do everything all at once.
Mhm.
You can actually refine, zoom in, zoom out on your process and just focus one room at a time and, take the pressure off. It's a lot of pressure to try to do the whole house all at one time from when you don't have a whole lot of experience doing that. So that's all.
Okay. So I guess in total fashion, like, the work of a designer is not just limited to the pretty finishes. It actually scales the entire span of the project and really goes from start to finish, from plan, from idea and concept to selection and execution and implementation.
Yes, very true. And we're thinking about a whole lot of aspects that create the balance and the symmetry and, in the lighting that affects the mood and all of it, how you're experiencing it, how you're living in it. Like the aesthetics, the finish aspect is just what you see at the end.
The goal and the role of designer is to help you, the homeowner, enjoy the process. And there's so many decisions, so many aspects, so many things, and the logistics behind trying to do all that. It can wear on you. And it does take a special person to really thrive in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something to keep in mind. Like, if you are working with a team of people and you feel anxious, either you're not allowing your team to lead you in the way that they're capable of, or you don't have the right team, because it should not be overly stressful. However, you have to relinquish control. And if you don't, you will stress yourself out no matter how good your team is.
That is true. That is true.
Let the experts do what they're good at doing.
So with that, if you found this episode helpful and intriguing and inspiring to help you along with your project, we would love if you continue to, follow along with us, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us questions.
Yeah.
We would love to see your questions on, well, what about this aspect or whatever in the project? We would love to take time and answer those questions for you. And so,
And hopefully now you know a little bit more about what interior designers really do. They're very collaborative in nature, and good ones are well worth the investment.
Exactly.
So make sure you follow us at Real Return on Design on our socials, and watch us on YouTube if you're not already.
We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time.
See you next time.